Hello, and welcome to Sleepy Videos. Tonight, we'll slowly explore some fascinating facts about the Odyssey. So get comfortable, relax, and let your mind gently drift as we begin. When most people hear the name Odysseus, the first things that come to mind are the Trojan Horse, or his long journey home. In reality, his story is far older and far more complex than many realize. According to Greek mythology, Odysseus was the king of Ithaca, a small but rugged island kingdom. Ithaca was neither large nor especially wealthy, which meant its ruler had to rely more on wisdom than on power. Unlike many legendary heroes, Odysseus is remembered not for his incredible strength, but for his remarkable ability to solve problems in ways that no one else could imagine. That is what makes him such an extraordinary hero, and the next chapter of his story reveals this even more clearly. While many heroes of ancient Greece sought glory on the battlefield, Odysseus became famous above all for his sharp intelligence. One of the greatest examples of this was the Trojan Horse. After a war that had dragged on for nearly 10 years, the Greek army still could not break through the mighty walls of Troy. According to legend, it was Odysseus who came up with the idea of building an enormous wooden horse and hiding Greek soldiers inside it. The Trojans believed the horse was a sacred offering to the gods and brought it into their city. In the silence of the night, the hidden soldiers climbed out, opened the city gates, and allowed the Greek army to enter. That single idea changed the course of the entire war, but it also marked the beginning of Odysseus's greatest and most difficult journey. When the war finally came to an end, Odysseus believed he would soon return home to his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus. Instead, the journey that should have taken only a short time stretched into 10 long years. Fierce storms, the anger of the gods, and mysterious islands delayed him at every turn. It is fascinating to think that Odysseus ultimately spent just as much time trying to return home as he had spent fighting in the war itself. 20 years away from Ithaca meant that his son grew from a small child into a young man without his father by his side. And the next encounter on that long voyage would become one of the most famous stories in all of Greek mythology. On one of the islands, Odysseus and his crew encountered the Cyclops known as Polyphemus, a giant with a single eye. At first, the cave they discovered seemed like a safe place to rest, but before long, the giant rolled a massive stone across the entrance, trapping everyone inside. According to the myth, Polyphemus began devouring the trapped sailors one by one. Odysseus quickly realized that brute strength would never defeat such a creature. Instead, he offered the giant strong wine, waited for him to fall asleep, and then drove a sharpened wooden stake into his only eye. But his cleverest trick had come even earlier. When Polyphemus asked his name, Odysseus replied, "Nobody." Later, when the blinded giant cried out for help, shouting that nobody had attacked him, the other Cyclopes believed nothing was wrong and left him alone. It was a brilliant deception that saved many lives, though it would soon bring serious consequences. As Odysseus and his men sailed away from the island, he could not resist calling back to Polyphemus. Perhaps out of pride, or perhaps because he wanted credit for his daring escape, he revealed his real name. That single moment changed everything. Polyphemus was the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and the wounded giant begged his father for revenge. Poseidon heard his son's prayer and vowed to make Odysseus's journey home as difficult as possible. In many ancient versions of the myth, this moment is seen as the cause of nearly every hardship that followed. A single act of pride cost Odysseus years of suffering, and before long he would face yet another strange and dangerous challenge. Later in his voyage, Odysseus's ship arrived at the island of Aiaia, home to the enchantress Circe. At first, she appeared to be a gracious hostess, warmly welcoming the weary sailors and inviting them to a feast. But the meal soon proved to be a trap. The men who drank Circe's enchanted potion were transformed into pigs, even though their minds remained completely human. Odysseus escaped the same fate thanks to the messenger god Hermes, who gave him a magical herb called moly, believed to protect anyone from powerful spells. In the end, Circe released the sailors and transformed from an enemy into an ally. She warned Odysseus about the dangers that still lay ahead on his voyage, and it was those warnings that guided him toward perhaps the most famous temptation of them all. One of the most famous trials in Odysseus's journey involved the Sirens, mysterious creatures whose songs were said to be so beautiful that no sailor could resist them. According to the legends, their enchanting voices lured passing ships toward deadly rocks where they were shattered by the waves. Circe had warned Odysseus about this danger beforehand, so once again he came up with an unusual solution. He ordered his men to fill their ears with beeswax so they would hear nothing at all. He himself, however, wanted to experience the siren's song while remaining safe. He instructed his crew to tie him tightly to the ship's mast and commanded them not to untie him, no matter how desperately he begged. As the ship sailed past the Sirens, Odysseus struggled against the irresistible temptation, but the ropes held him firmly in place. Only after the haunting melody had faded into the distance did his men release him. It was yet another victory won through wisdom rather than strength, but the sea had still not revealed its greatest dangers. Soon afterward, Odysseus was forced to sail between two terrifying monsters. On one side waited Scylla, a six-headed sea creature that snatched sailors from passing ships. On the other side churned Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool said to swallow entire vessels whole. In this situation, there was no perfect choice. If the ship drifted too close to Charybdis, everyone aboard would perish. So Odysseus steered closer to Scylla, knowing that he would lose some of his men. It is one of the saddest moments in Greek mythology because it reminds us that sometimes a leader must make a decision in which no option feels truly right. After this heartbreaking sacrifice, the voyage continued toward an island whose events would demonstrate just how difficult it can be to obey even the clearest warnings. The sun god Helios owned a sacred herd of cattle that was never to be harmed under any circumstances. Both Circe and the prophet Tiresias had warned Odysseus of this danger in no uncertain terms. But during a long and relentless storm, his crew suffered from hunger day after day. While Odysseus was away praying to the gods, the starving sailors decided to slaughter several of the sacred animals, believing they could ask for forgiveness afterward. According to the myth, Helios became so furious that Zeus struck their ship with a thunderbolt as soon as they returned to the open sea. Every member of the crew drowned, and only Odysseus survived. Alone, he drifted across the endless waters, carried wherever the waves chose to take him. That lonely voyage eventually led him to a place where time itself seemed almost to stand still. At last, Odysseus was washed ashore on the island of Ogygia, home to the nymph Calypso. According to the legend, Calypso fell deeply in love with him and even offered him immortality if he would remain with her forever. It might sound like an irresistible offer, but Odysseus's heart still longed for Ithaca. He spent 7 long years on the island, often gazing out across the sea and dreaming of home. Only when the gods decided that his journey must continue did Calypso finally let him go. She helped him build a raft, provided him with food for the voyage, and quietly watched as he sailed once more into the open sea. His homeland was now closer than ever before, but his final challenges still lay ahead. When Odysseus finally reached Ithaca, He did not march straight into his palace. Instead, the goddess Athena disguised him as an old beggar so that no one would recognize him. During his long absence, a group of powerful noblemen had taken over his home, convinced that Odysseus had died. They competed for the hand of his wife, Penelope, while feasting on the king's food and treating his palace as if it already belonged to them. Disguised as a humble beggar, Odysseus was able to walk among them unnoticed, seeing with his own eyes who had remained loyal and who had not. His patience allowed him to prepare his final move with great care. At the end of the story, Penelope announced a contest. She declared that only the man who could string Odysseus's enormous bow and shoot an arrow cleanly through the holes of 12 axe heads would win her hand in marriage. None of the suitors could even bend the bow, let alone string it. Then the old beggar stepped forward and quietly asked for his turn. The room fell silent as he took the bow into his hands. Without effort, he strung it and sent the arrow flying perfectly through all 12 axe heads. Only then did Odysseus reveal his true identity. His extraordinary journey, which had lasted 20 years and carried him through storms, monsters, angry gods, and countless trials, had finally come to an end. Perhaps that is why the story of Odysseus has endured for thousands of years, not because he was the strongest of heroes, but because he never gave up searching for the road that would lead him home. Thanks for listening. If you're still awake, I hope you enjoyed tonight's journey. And if you've already fallen asleep, then I suppose I won't disturb you. Good night, and I'll see you next time on Sleepy Videos.